There are secrets that they would rather remain hidden. Yet when we dig deep enough, those secrets are revealed. In another video on this channel, Eden, the Anunnaki Lab, we walked through a different reading of Genesis. We treated Eden not as a mythic orchard, but as a functioning site, a facility, an Anunnaki lab. That was a controlled environment, but that was only the architecture. What happened inside that installation, the experiment itself, remains the deeper secret of Eden. In the Hebrew Bible, Yahweh Elohim can be seen not as a distant deity, but as a technician, standing in a chamber of cold light. The first human, the Adam, lies under a deep, engineered sleep, the tardēmāh. From his side, the tsēlāʁ, not a rib, but a structural segment, is taken. A sliver of living architecture, archived and built into another form, not conjured, but constructed. The text, in its raw Hebrew, describes a scene of precision, extraction, replication, and design. And that's where this new investigation begins. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, us and our. A language of plurality that refuses to collapse into the singular. Scholars label it plural of majesty, a grammatical flourish to magnify the divine. But in Hebrew, the verb tense betrays a council, an internal conversation. The same form appears when kings consult assemblies, when plans require multiple agents to act in unison. The voice does not speak as a monarch, it speaks as a team. Aramaic fragments from the Second Temple period hint that the us referred to the Sod Elyon, the High Council, a chamber of divine beings. Psalm 82 echoes the memory. El stands in the midst of the Elohim. He judges among them. The Bible itself remembers the council, but the translators locked it behind a singular noun. One voice for many, a command masked as decree. And then there's Elohim, often translated simply as God, but grammatically, Elohim is a plural noun. In many passages, it clearly refers to multiple beings, divine ones, rulers, a council. Psalm 82 famously pictures God standing in the midst of the Elohim, judging among them. And in Genesis 1:26, the voice says, "Let us make man in our image, us, not I." Could this be the language of a team? Scholars like Dr. Michael Heiser argue this reflects an ancient belief in a divine council, multiple agents acting together. In the Genesis 2 account, this plurality remains implicit but potent. The construction process doesn't name individual actors, but the plural root suggests a group, a lab team, operators. Not just a solitary hand crafting from clay, but coordinated intervention, sedation, extraction, assembly. This logic doesn't break the text, it animates it, gives it surgical clarity. The moment man is introduced, the verbs shift again. And Elohim created the man in his image. Male and female he created them. Singular action follows plural intent. The text behaves like a record of coordination, planning in plurality, execution in unity. It mirrors the protocols of an operation, multiple signatures authorizing a single procedure. Then comes the interface, the breath. Genesis 2:7. Yahweh Elohim formed the man of dust from the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. The Hebrew nesama is not metaphorical wind, it is a transfer term. In Akkadian parallels, Nishatu marks the imparting of essence, data, command, breath as encoding. The result, Ha-Adam, the human, becomes a nefesh chaya, a living being, animated not by instinct but by instruction. The implications unfold quietly. Elohim, a council name, issues the design. Ruach, an energetic agent, executes it. Nesama, the breath, activates the interface. Dust is assembled, calibrated, and then powered. The first prototype is awake. Mainstream theology calls it metaphor, God sharing consciousness with clay, but the Hebrew behaves like an operation log. Sequential verbs, closure terms, procedural markers. The language reads as if preserving memory, not allegory. The same image repeats across civilizations. In Egypt, Khnum molds man on a potter's wheel while Thoth records specifications. In Sumer, Enki and Ninmah shape the Lulu Amelu from earth mixed with divine essence. In each, a group performs the act. A council authorizes the experiment. Genesis mirrors that pattern, only streamlined, sanitized, compressed into monotheistic code. If this were only myth, why use verbs of architecture and manufacture? Bara, to create, cut out. Yatsar, to form, mold. Banāh, to build, assemble. Why pair them with closure verbs like sagar, to seal, to secure? The syntax behaves like a technical blueprint, not liturgical poetry. Even the setting behaves like containment. Eden, Gan Eden, translates not as wild paradise but as an enclosed garden from Gan, a fenced or defended space. Its Sumerian cognate Eden means plain, steppe, or controlled zone. The text describes irrigation channels, not streams. A regulated biosphere, not wilderness. A habitat constructed, then populated. If Elohim were plural, then the garden was not only divine, it was operational. The plurality planned, the singular acted, the breath deployed, a controlled genesis. The anomaly remains. Why preserve such precision if the goal were devotion? Why code the verbs like engineering stages? Unless the record was never meant as parable, but as memory. A controlled recollection of a time when us walked the earth and breath became biology. Perhaps myth isn't metaphor, perhaps it is memory. The chamber is quiet, stone still. The light doesn't flicker, it hums, steady and deliberate, as if calibrated. A human figure lies motionless at the center, not dead, not asleep, suspended. The text calls it tardēmāh, not ordinary sleep, not slumber, but something deeper, rare, controlled, induced. A word used only a handful of times in the Hebrew scriptures, and always when something extraordinary is underway. In Genesis 2:21, it's translated as deep sleep, but it behaves more like anesthesia, the kind used before an incision. The subject, Ha-Adam, the human, is placed into this state, not with a chant, not with magic, but by deliberate initiation. Wayapel Yahweh Elohim tardēmāh al Ha-Adam. Yahweh Elohim caused a tardēmāh to fall upon the man. The term echoes again in Isaiah 29:10, where it speaks of divine agency imposing a trance, sealing eyes, dulling senses, operational stasis. A procedure is beginning. Then the extraction. The verse continues, Wayika ahat mitzalotah, and he took one of his tsēlāʿ. But here something fractures, because tsēlāʿ has long been rendered rib, a tidy, familiar, almost folkloric image, a bone from the side, pulled clean, shaped into the first woman. But tsēlāʿ isn't just rib. In fact, it's almost never rib. Across the Hebrew Bible, tsēlāʿ describes architectural structures, side chambers in the tabernacle, panels of sacred space, supportive sections in the temple's construction. Exodus 26, 1 Kings 6. In every case, it's structural, not skeletal. The same word builds holy spaces. A tsēlāʁ is a segment, a curved side, a support member. So what is being taken from the human? not merely a bone, but a piece of internal structure, a section, like removing a panel from a machine, an engineered extraction, not a poetic pluck. It fits the pattern of controlled sampling, precision removal, the kind seen in technical blueprints, not campfire myths. Immediately after, the text says, "Wayasgor basar tatena," and he closed up the flesh beneath it. The Hebrew verb sagar means more than just close. It carries a sense of sealing. Shutting something with security, like sealing a chamber. Combined with basar, flesh, the image tightens. Closure of a wound. The site is sealed, a surgical closure. Preparation, extraction, closure. What comes next is not shaping or conjuring, it's banāh. Genesis 2:22, "Wayiben Yahweh Elohim et tsēlāʿ, le'isa," and Yahweh Elohim built the tsēlāʿ into a woman. Banāh, in Hebrew, is the same verb used for constructing houses, cities, and altars. It means to build, to assemble, to fabricate with intention and parts. Why would a biological event use architectural language? Unless the language itself is preserving a memory, not of a vision or dream, but of a procedure. One so distinct, its mechanics couldn't be veiled in metaphor, and so a structural term, tsēlāʁ, is removed. The site is sealed, sagar. Then the extracted part is built, banāh, into another being. Genesis 2 does not say woman was created, bara, or formed, yatsar. It says she was built, engineered. And when the process is complete, the text tells us she was presented to the man, Wayabi'a el ha-Adam, and he brought her to the man. This is a step-by-step procedural chain, each action nested in the next, a sequence more reminiscent of an operation log than a campfire tale. The rhythm of the verses supports this. First, induced unconsciousness, then the removal of a structural segment, the sealing of the site, the construction of a new entity, and finally, the pairing. It reads like a workflow preserved through sacred text, a narrative shell wrapped around a technical memory. Now, one last thread, almost invisible, but crucial. The setting, Eden. The Hebrew Eden shares roots with the Sumerian Eden, meaning plain or steppe, a geographic term. But also, in Sumerian literature, the Eden appears as a designated zone, a controlled space, a restricted facility, a biospheric enclosure, a lab. That leap belongs to the next act, but even without it, Genesis leaves hints. This isn't wild nature, it's a garden, gan, in Hebrew, an enclosed, cultivated space, a protected environment prepared in advance. Something about this place was engineered to contain, to regulate, to host, and into it the human is placed, but not before being opened, and built, and closed. These verses, Genesis 2:21-22, are often read as symbolic, allegorical, even poetic, but their vocabulary resists that. They shift tone, they don't float, they grip. Tardēmāh means deep stasis, tsēlāʁ means structural segment, banāh stands for to build, sagar means to seal. Architecture and biology fused, procedure encoded as story, and when viewed through the lens of linguistic consistency, not religious tradition, the pattern is hard to dismiss. Genesis is not just telling us that woman came from man, it is preserving how. The text behaves like it remembers, and if that's true, then the next question isn't what happened, it's who was doing it, and where. The answers may lie not in the garden, but in the laboratory, and that lab might not have been human. The question is no longer if it is symbolic, it is how much of its detail was meant to survive as memory. And when we lift the veil to Mesopotamia, we will find that the glint of that protocol matches older tablets, older labs, older hands crafting prototypes and guardians. The wind is still in the marshes. Above, the sky is silent. But deep beneath, in a facility older than memory, something is stirring. A divine body, that of Elohim or the Anunnaki themselves, stands at the threshold of the Eden, not a garden, but a laboratory. Its corridors echo with the quiet hum of containment fields, climate control systems, and genetic arrays. Enki, Lord of Waters and Wisdom, strides forward, holding blueprints in his mind. Beside him, Ninmah, the birth goddess and master artisan, examines clay molds, embryo vats, and life activation chambers. They are here to solve a crisis. The gods are burdened. In the myths, the Agigi, the lesser gods, toil in canals, dig in earth, tend fields, and finally rebel. Complaint spreads like disease. The lower deities verbalize a crisis of labor. They demand relief from manual drudgery. The Divine Mother Namu whispers the solution. Let us build a laborer, one who can kneel, dig, haul, one who suffers toil so the gods may rest. That is why we begin, not with poetry, but with necessity. Enki, whose dominion is wisdom, crafts, and the deep waters, becomes the supervisor. In Sumerian myth, he is the mediator, wise, inventive, boundary crossing. His domain includes magic, crafts, and the hidden codes of life. He calculates variables, models failures, iterates protocols. To shape a workforce, he will engineer. Eden, the steppe or plain of Sumer, is not nature's gift. It is the name of a zone. Eden. And if the Hebrew Eden is a memory of Eden, then the myth of paradise conceals a facility, a biome under regulation. In the later acts, we'll press that further, but here we step into the lab itself. Eridu, the city of Enki, becomes the locus. In Sitchin's reconstruction, Eridu houses sanctums, sealed complexes, life engineering chambers. There, the Eden becomes a holy house reserved for genetic work. Enlil concedes its sanctity, stating, "The Eden shall be a place for thy holy house." The lab is sanctified, limited, and controlled. We now move to the myth Enki and Ninmah. In that text, Enki and Ninmah collaborate to create humankind. The myth is not static or serene. It describes trial and error, flawed designs, contest, assignment. Humanity is not made in one flawless stroke. It is tested, iterated, calibrated. The myth describes how Ninmah fashions clay forms, some with defects, one lame, one mute, one blind. Enki steps in, assigns each a fate. Some are integrated. One, called Umul, is so malformed that no fate can be assigned. He is left without role. This is a lab's language: prototype, then defect, then discard or assign, then rework. Enki claims he can categorize flawed beings, place them into niches, but when a specimen is beyond integration, it stands as failure. The myth doesn't treat it as sin, it treats it as unsalvageable design. That is exquisitely engineering logic. Imagine the chamber. Vats of clay, molds, gestation pods. Ninmah sculpts forms with subtle deviations. Enki reads micro-deviations, calibrates the life spark module, assigns activation parameters. Some respond, some don't. Umul fails entirely. He is the unrepairable unit. At the banquet, gods drink, get exuberant, and challenge each other. Make one that is imperfect, see if he has place, says Ninmah. Enki responds by applying his logic of assignment and integration. In the second phase, Enki himself fashions beings, including one second failed unit, which he cannot assign. The myth ends in tension. In this space, Enki is the genetic supervisor, Ninmah the sculptor. The clay becomes scaffolding, and the breath or spark is the activation vector. Their contest is not one of gods versus humans. but of technique versus variant. Now reflect. The Hebrew Genesis procedure we decoded before, the words tardēmāh, tsēlāʿ, sagar, banāh, finds resonance here. The lab removes structure, seals the host, builds anew. Here, ninmah shapes clay, Enki injects spark. Here, the tsēlāʿ metaphor becomes clay, the controller's mold. The symbol becomes literal in the Mesopotamian frame. This is the bridge. The Hebrew script encodes an operation. The Sumerian myth reveals the operators. But conflict shadows the lab. Enlil, guardian of cosmic order, distrusts human empowerment. In myth, Enlil condemns too much knowledge, too much autonomy. When the hybrid creation begins to exceed containment, he demands restriction. The expulsion from Eden is not moral, but procedural, a quarantine, a cutoff. The lab is breached, the subject must be cast out. In Sitchin's telling, this becomes policy. Enlil pushes for control over the gene line. Enki defends experimentation. The contest is not only about creation, it is about authority over life. The Eden becomes not only lab, but fortress with restricted gates, command protocols, and guarded knowledge. Imagine the moment. A prototype opens an internal threshold, gains knowledge, touches immortality circuits. Protocol triggers lockdown, security systems activate. The being is expelled, segregated, banned from returning. The lab records dark out. Genesis remembers that scene as exile. But inside the lab, it was containment failure. The boundary was broken. Enlil's faction intervened. The subject was unlinked, the memory edited. Thus, the Hebrew expulsion becomes the lab procedure's failsafe, and the mythic narrative preserves the power conflict. Elohim is plural. Here in Sumer, the operators, Enki, Ninmah, Enlil, are multiple. Their policies diverge. One favors empowerment, one demands containment. In this act, we see that the Eden is no garden of innocence. It is the locus of genetic engineering, prototype iteration, life activation protocols, authority struggle, containment policy. The Hebrew procedural vocabulary is a memory of that zone, encoded into scripture. Genesis is not origin myth, it is lab logbook, partially redacted. Next, we will plunge deeper. We'll explore the Sumerian and Akkadian texts that encode variant trials, shifting roles of the divine council, and the alignment of technical idioms between Hebrew and Sumerian. We will trace how Elohim becomes a plural council, how mastery over knowledge becomes contested, and how myth preserves the memory of genetic engineers as gods. But already now, you may hold this thought. When Genesis says, "Let us make man in our image," the US is not rhetorical flourish. It is the operator team speaking to itself. The E.din is not pristine nature. It is the workbench, and the first humans were not born, but built. In the quiet chambers, the lab lies waiting, in script, myth, and memory. The sky above the lab dims. Inside the central chamber, technicians hover. The human subject remains in stasis, unconscious, anesthetized, or whatever state tardēmāh allowed. It is at this threshold, between creation and activation, that words do their deepest work. The Genesis writer may have been centuries removed from the lab's hum and humoral arrays. Yet in the Hebrew record, the operation's anatomy remains encoded. The verbs we unearthed do not simply narrate, they prescribe. They form a chain: sedation, extraction, closure, build, presentation. In that, we read more than story. We read engineering. This chain is unique. No other part of Scripture describes human or divine creation in this mechanical sequence. Elsewhere, creation is bara, to create, yatsar, to form, or raham, to conceive. Here, banāh, to build, takes center stage. The text shifts register, from poetic evocation to operational log. It is by this very shift that we glimpse a memory. The author remembered a process, not a myth, as though someone once whispered, "This is how it was built." And now, the Elohim step into view. The plural noun, rather than a rhetorical flourish, is the operator team, coordinating the work. Hebrew grammar allows Elohim to carry a plural ending while controlling singular verbs in many cases, yet the plural nuance remains. In Genesis 1:26, one of the few passages where the verb shifts into plural, we find, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." The speech becomes collective. The fact that Elohim elsewhere takes singular verbs does not erase that plural theatricality, it masks it. Within ancient Near Eastern context, creation was not the deed of a solitary deity, but the act of a divine council. Ugaritic, Akkadian, and Canaanite sources speak of assemblies of gods, each with jurisdiction. In that frame, the biblical poet did not invent plurality, he inherited it. Elohim is a council, not a singular throne, and "let us make" is not anthropomorphism, it is protocol. In our reading, the US is literal, a team of technicians, Elohim, the plural machinists of life. And what does it mean to make humanity in their image and likeness? The conventional gloss is spiritual resemblance, moral or relational reflection. But the technical reading reads differently. Tselāṃ is not just image, it comes from a root meaning cut out, a template, a cast. Demut is likeness, pattern, structural equivalence. Together they read like replicate our pattern, copy our form, genes, blueprint, matrix. The language suggests a mirror imprint, not a moral echo. Look also at Genesis 2:7. Yahweh Elohim formed the human from the dust, then breathed into his nostrils the nishmat hayim, the breath of life. That breath is not mere wind, it is infusion. In Sumerian cosmogony, life is carried by mi or nish, encoded vitality, imprinted essence. In myth, gods impose mi, grant nish, they share divine codes. The Hebrew nishmat hayim can be read as the final transfer, the activation vector, dust plus structure plus breath, completion. So the Hebrew chain is operational, sedation, then sample, then seal, then assembly, then activation. And the actors, the Elohim or the Anunnaki, are a technical collective. They speak in us, they make in our likeness, they breathe life, installing code. Now we lift the veil to the Sumerian side, where the same roles play out. In Enki and Ninmah, the sculptress molds clay beings. Ninmah fashions deficits, faulty arms, blind eyes, crippled limbs. Enki steps in, he assigns fates, he reconfigures, he integrates some creatures into the workforce. One is too malformed, and cannot be assigned a role. In effect, he is discarded. ETCSL transliteration and translations show this contest in detail. Thus, the myth encodes iteration, failure, triage, qualities of laboratory practice. In another myth, Enki and the World Order, Enki orders functions, distributes the Emi, the divine codes, establishes cosmic roles. Thus, Elohim is the Hebrew name for a plural technical council we glimpse more clearly in Sumerian memory. The table is complete. Hebrew tardēmāh is the Sumerian stasis motif. Hebrew lakach tsēlāʿ is the Sumerian clay extraction. Hebrew banāh is the Sumerian molding or shaping. Hebrew nishmat hayim is the Sumerian me. Hebrew Elohim is the Sumerian Anunnaki council. Viewed together, the two corpora are two halves of one blueprint, one lexical, one mythic. The priestly redactors turned the memory into sacred narrative, masking technology under metaphor. A rib became tsēlāʿ, now reinterpreted as side chamber. A clay mold became flesh. Breath became soul. Over centuries, the priests retained the structure: sedation, extraction, closure, assembly, infusion, but abstracted it as creation. Theology electrifies the memory. The mask is older than most understand. What theology names divine creation may, in truth, be the first recorded instance of genetic engineering, supervised by a council of technicians. And so we begin to see why Elohim remains plural, why humanity bears the pattern of gods, and why breath is the code injection. We stand now at the pivot. The Hebrew may hide the Sumerian, and the Sumerian may reify the Hebrew, but they converge. The same procedure, the same actors, two voices. Together, they give us a map of a lost laboratory, its memory breathed into scripture and myth. The sacred narrative you heard as metaphor may be a mechanical archive. The divine text may not report a miracle, but preserve a lab log. The actors are not mythic abstractions, but technicians. And between the lines, there hums a memory of engineering, not enchantment. When disparate myths across lands echo the same workflow, we will see the ghost of one project at the dawn of our species. And it will no longer be unthinkable that the seeds of creation were sown not by poetry, but by tools, by protocols, by divine engineers who cataloged their work in code and clay. Let the memory stir. We cross a desert plateau, rise over river valleys, descend into sacred temples. In India, a hush. In Mesoamerica, a wind. In Africa, drums. We enter each myth as a lab memoir in disguise. India. Gandhari carries a wish of 100 sons. Yet no child emerges. Instead, she births a mass of flesh, hard, inert. The divine sage Vyasa intervenes, cut it into 100 pieces, each deposited in a jar filled with ghee, incubated. After 2 more years, the jars open, and from them emerge the 100 Kauravas and 1 daughter, Dusala. What is this if not a bioreactor gestation? A mass subdivided, put into vessels, programmed to mature. No womb, no sexual union, only segmentation plus incubation plus activation. The myth speaks of calibrated patience, and when life emerges, it does so as if grown, not born. In addition, the Puranic conception stories, Kunti invoking gods via mantras, Surya, the sun, in Karna's birth, suggest life coded by spoken activation rather than seed convention. A spark of energy rather than a seed planted. The technology of voice, of code, rather than flesh to flesh. In Eden, the Nishmat Hayim was the code injection. In India, the mantra is the code. Thus, India carries both motifs, engineered incubation and code-based activation. Mesoamerica. In the Popol Vuh, the Maya creation myth, the gods try and fail multiple times before succeeding. Their first attempt, make humans from mud. They slack, fall apart, water dissolves them. Then wood, better form, but no heart, no memory, no loyalty. The gods flood the world, destroy the failed prototypes. Finally, they create humans from maize dough, the perfect substrate in their world. These humans speak, feel, remember. But in that success lies limitation. To prevent equality, the gods cloud their vision, reduce their access to knowledge. The restriction motif mirrors Eden's tree of knowledge and tree of life gatekeeping. In another myth, Quetzalcoatl descends into the underworld, retrieves ancestral bones, grinds them into powder, mixes with his own blood, and forms humanity. Bone as archive, blood as activation medium. Archive plus spark equals life. That is the same logic we saw in Eden, structural template plus activation vector. Here, the gods perform their own lab, Iterating, measuring, refining. The material shifts, mud to wood to maize, but the workflow is strikingly parallel. The archive is adapted, then energized, then limited. Africa. In Yoruba cosmology, Obatala molds humans from clay. The supreme deity Olodumare, or Olorun, breathes life into them. But when Obatala is drunk, he produces malformed humans, imperfect limbs, asymmetry. These errors are the myth's acknowledgement of manufacturing risk. This myth preserves three threads: fabrication, clay, activation, breath and the divine spark, and quality control and the variant error. In Eden, the operation had sample removal, build, seal, then infusion. Here, the same sequence plays in local terms. The Dogon myth adds another twist. The Namo divided their own bodies to seed life on Earth, self-division as essence transmission. Fragmentation becomes seeding. That mirrors extraction and the partitioning logic. The Nomo also descend from the sky, bringing life codes from above. In effect, they act as cosmic engineers. Egypt and Greece. In Egypt, the god Khnum fashions bodies on his potter's wheel, then places them into wombs or into the world. He is the ancient craftsman, sculpting form before life enters. Fabrication first, life second. That echoes Eden's separation of structure, then activation. In Greece, Prometheus molds man from clay. Athena, or Zeus, breathes life into him. Pandora is assembled by Hephaestus under divine engineering constraints. Each god contributes function, virtue, intrigue, mortality. She is constructed, endowed, limited. The artisan motif, assembly plus spark plus boundary, is strong. In each of these traditions, form comes first, then breath. In some cases, defects appear, limitations are imposed, knowledge is restricted. The artifacts of creation carry scars of control. Across cultures, the same motifs repeat: prototype and failure, template or substrate for life, activation of life, iteration and refinement, gating and limitation. Creation is not without its boundaries. Maya gods obscure human vision. The tree of knowledge in Eden is off limits. Greek gods impose mortality. These limitations prevent humans from becoming fully divine, ensuring a permanent distinction between creator and creation. And underlying all, plural divine agents. Maya creation is done in council. Tepiu, Kukumats, Hurakan. Indian deities deliberate. Yoruba gods collaborate in Genesis. Greek pantheon enacts creation as a team. Even in Hebrew, Elohim is plural. These are echoes, not duplicates. But the shared shape is too consistent to ignore. We saw Genesis's vocabulary. We saw Sumer's operators. Now we see creation protocols etched in myth across oceans. The journey across lands is not random. It is evidence of memory in diaspora. The lab, the Eden, was not local. Its protocol spread in mythic fractals. Let us begin where the record is clearest. In the Hebrew scrolls, cloaked in priestly language but pulsing with precision, we read the sequence. In Genesis 2:21-22, the verbs line up like a surgical report. Yahweh Elohim caused a state of induced stasis, a sedation to fall upon the man. He made a surgical extraction of his tsēlāʿ, not rib, but a segment, a structure, an architectural side, the structural side section. He sealed the flesh beneath it, and Yahweh Elohim assembled the segment into a woman. Genesis, more than any other ancient text, lays down the bones of the machine, but it does not name the technicians. That, as we saw before, was the role of the Sumerians. In clay-fragmented myths of Enki and Ninmah, in the deliberate molding of flawed prototypes, the life force, and the breath of the Emi, the vital codes, we found the hands behind the procedure. Sumer gave us the operators. And now we discover that the same 5 steps, substrate, segmentation, assembly, activation, restriction, echo across the mythologies of the planet. Step 1. The substrate. Every act of creation begins with a body, a form to house essence. In Egypt, the potter god Khnum spins clay on a wheel, fashioning humans like jars to be filled. The British Museum recounts this divine wheelwork in ritual detail. The craft is not abstract. It is manual, specific, deliberate. In Greece, Prometheus kneads humanity from earth and water, a material prototype molded to house breath. The Yoruba tell of Obatala, who sculpts human bodies from clay, but when drunk, his hand slips and he crafts malformed beings, echoes of the Sumerian flawed prototypes. Even here, divine creation is imperfect, iterative. In India, the Mahabharata tells of Gandhari, whose long-awaited pregnancy yields not a child, but a mass of flesh. The sage Vyasa slices it into 100 segments and places them in jars of clarified butter, ghee, to gestate. These are not children of natural birth. They are cultivated, matured, incubated. The language of biotechnology in a Bronze Age text. In Mesoamerica, the Maya describe gods crafting humans first from mud, then wood, and finally from maize, the sacred plant. Failed materials lead to failed prototypes. The success only comes when the right substrate is selected. The Popol Vuh preserves this sequence as a developmental trial record. And in Aztec cosmology, Quetzalcoatl descends to the underworld, to Mictlan, to recover the bones of previous races. Bones become the genetic archive, the ancestral data. He grinds them, mixes them with his own blood, and from this synthesis, blood as vector, bone as template, births humanity anew. Different materials, same function, substrate. Step 2. Extraction. In Genesis, Yahweh Elohim takes a tsēlāʿ, not a rib, but a segment, from Adam. This is the raw sample, the genetic donor source. In India, Gandhari's flesh mass is cut into 100 equal parts. This is segmentation for lab-scale multiplication. In Aztec myth, the bones are gathered, shattered fragments of prior beings, and prepared for activation. The fragmentation of prior life becomes the seed of new life. Segmentation is not just physical, it is methodological. Step 3. Incubation. Genesis again delivers the clearest sequence, banāh, to build, to engineer, and sagar, to seal, to close. The language reads not like mysticism, but like technical instruction, a surgery with closure, an incision with repair. In India, the segmented embryos are placed in jars, bioreactors in all but name. The PMC journal even analyzes this as a pre-modern gestational motif, incubation by intent, not by accident. Khnum, after sculpting clay bodies, places them into the wombs of goddesses, divine implantation, form, vessel, activation. In Africa, the Yoruba describe the breath of Olodumare bringing life into clay, but only after the form is shaped. Sequence matters. And in Greece, Hephaestus assembles Pandora, the first woman, under Zeus's orders. Each god contributes a gift. Functionality is modular, additive, engineered. Step 4. Activation vector. In Genesis 2:7, Yahweh Elohim forms man from dust and breathes into him the Nishmat Hayim, the breath of life. This Nishmat, from the Hebrew root nsham, shares lineage with neshama, a word meaning soul, but also breath and essence. It is a vital code, a programming breath. In Sumer, the nish is the vital power. The me, the sacred essence, is transferred. a digital metaphor embedded in clay. In Egypt, breath is the ka, the sustaining soul. Without it, the body is inert. With it, it walks. In Greece, Athena breathes spirit into Prometheus's clay man. In India, Kunti invokes divine seed through mantras, not physical union, but coded invocation. The child is not born of biology, but of divine algorithm. And the Aztecs preserve the most visceral metaphor, blood, the life vector. Quetzalcoatl bleeds into the bone mix. His blood animates. Activation is literal, the god's life poured into the template. Step 5. Limitation. In Genesis, the human is expelled from Eden after approaching the tree of knowledge, a containment breach. Yahweh Elohim says, "Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Now, lest he reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." Access is revoked. The lab gates are sealed. In the Maya Popol Vuh, after the gods succeed in making humans from maize, they say, "They are too perfect. They see too clearly. Let us cloud their vision." The gods restrict their understanding, a genetic downgrade, artificial limitation. In Greek myth, Pandora carries a jar of constraints. Once opened, mortality, suffering, and confusion escape. Limitation is engineered, not accidental, programmed. Egyptian cosmology imposes ma'at, order, upon humanity. To overstep is to provoke the gods' containment systems. The pattern is clear. Once activation succeeds, control mechanisms follow. One can argue symbolism, one can debate allegory, but across independent civilizations who never met, never traded myths, the same steps are preserved: material selection, segmentation of substance, assembly and gestation, activation via breath, blood, or code and gating, limitation, expulsion, containment. These are not just stories, these are procedures. And among them all, the Genesis-Sumerian axis remains the most technical, the most structured, the most deliberate. The Hebrew text delivers the language of the operation. The Sumerian tablets record the operators, their tensions, their trials, their failures. Together, they form the nucleus of a memory, the record of an experiment that was once real, preserved across cultures in echo, myth, and metaphor. The Eden Protocol is not unique. It is simply the clearest surviving version of a global memory, a project that touched every corner of the ancient world, refracted through the lens of gods, and whispered down through generations as myth. But now, the pattern is awake again, and the world is remembering. We are remembering. If you liked the video, hit the like button and leave a comment. Share this knowledge with those interested in the topic. See you in the next video.